Hello everyone, welcome to Coffee Cup Enlightenment. Today I'm going to talk about who am I, and I'm just going to get directly to the point with what is our identity. And our identity is like silent, observing eyes. It doesn't have a body. It's almost like just eyes best represents out of all the senses of the body. The eyes represent the most closest sort of, expression of our identity, which is perceiving. It looks at things, but it itself is not a thing. And to the mind, this doesn't make sense. How can you be a set of eyes and look at things, but you yourself being not a thing? But this is just the way it is. This is what our original identity is, and it's silent. It doesn't have a voice. It isn't a thinker. It doesn't chatter. It doesn't have mind talk to it, and it has absolute knowing that's beyond added upon conceptual frameworks, which is again ununderstandable to the mind. Through the mindset, we add concepts together, and this becomes the so-called knowledge. The pure knowing that exists prior to that has nothing to do with anything added upon. It's the knower of everything, and we are silent perceivers of everything, but we ourselves are not a thing. And some of the things that our identity gets confused with is the thinker. So this is a conceptual, mind-made self, and very quickly we can easily say through the thinking realm, come up with experiences through the thinking realm and ask for a solution based on the thinking realm. Yet it can never come to a solution because the error was in the thinking realm itself. The answer to everything is very simple, and that is that we're the awareness that sees the thinker, and that's where you come up with the solution. So basically whatever the thinker says is really meaningless and pointless. You'll go round and round in circles in an eternity in the thinker realm trying to solve its own problems, when the thinker realm itself is the problem. And I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean it in the way that our awareness is here and it is perceiving the thinker. So if you're trying to be this thinker, trying to solve the solution to whatever scenario of this thinking realm creates, then it'll never be created because you're in the thinking realm. And that's why just awareness itself undoes everything. It's silent. It just looks at the thinker. It doesn't make any comments about the thinker. It doesn't make any likes or dislikes about the thinker. And so I hope this isn't becoming too shaky, the traffic. And yeah, it's just silence. So every answer to every dilemma is actually created by being a thing, by either being the thinker, by being the liker and the disliker. That's another conceptual identity. To being, I'm getting a bit distracted while I'm driving, but there's many sort of conceptual identities: the liker, the disliker, the thinker, and they're into, I guess, the main sort of. I did have another one, but I forgot it now. But if you try to, it's the destiny of these realms, these thing-based realms, to create problems. The problem is part of the greater intelligence to bring you to awareness, to look at yourself as I am not this thing, I am the awareness of the thing. And in this, there's a solution to all. You'll see that all the problems that was created by becoming the identity of a thing then become obsolete. The problems are destined to be created in order to trigger yourself to look and step back and become the awareness of what sort of identity thing you have become. And therefore it does not matter any of the problems of the thing-based identities, such as the thinker, the liker, the disliker. It's inherent to have problems in these states, and it's not personal. The problems are not meant to be solved. What they're designed to do is to nudge you in such a manner to step back and become to be that you already are, which is the awareness. And look at the thing, look at the thinker, look at the liker, the disliker, and not the other one was the chooser. So easy to think in the pure knowing state. Decisions already made. They come to you in the moment they are needed, and there is no chooser, there is no thinker, and there is no liker or disliker. All of these are a mind-based, thing-based identity, which is illusionary, and will cause nudges, guaranteed, without fail. And there is no solution to their problems, because the problems are not designed to be solved. They're designed for you to step out of that identity realm, of that thing. So, yes. So you can see how it gets into a riddle. You can spend lifetimes in these realms of thinker, the chooser, the liker and disliker, and say, I, this, I, that, yet the very problem is the using the word I in these, associated with these thing-based states. You are not a thing. You are no thing. And if you can self-evidently check this for yourself, just by just look at the thinker and look at it in such a manner where it starts to generate a sensation that you are the awareness of the thinker. Look at all the flavour that's tied into this thinker, to this chooser, to this liker and disliker of identity. Say your name, Peter Demetrio, and then look at that thinker and see all the flavour attached and the personality attached to that, and then get the sensation that you are the witness to this thing-based identity. And who you are is not a thing, it is just a silent set of eyes that absolutely knows everything. And it is not a knowing that's anything similar to the conceptual knowledge that we are familiar with in this earthly realm. So you can just test it out every time you're in this state. The best way to detect whether you're in this state is you're going to have a problem. Inevitably, it's going to happen. And when you detect that you got any single problem, it means your consciousness is sitting too close to the cinema screen, and it thinks it is this thing here. And what's needed is just look at the thing and look at it in such a manner where it starts to trigger a recognition that, hang on, I'm the one that's watching this thing. I am not the thing. And this will eventually increase your, you can call it strength. It'll each time a thing is recognized as just a thing, as not you, as not your identity, this awareness will grow in its recognition. And as it grows, it becomes more easier to detect things that are not you, that are not your identity. As I said, our only identity is just simply awareness. It is silent. It is like a set of lips that has its mouth zipped closed. It doesn't talk at all. It doesn't have any commentary. It doesn't have any likes or dislikes. It is completely neutral to the perception of what it sees. And if there is any sensation of non-neutrality, it's because there's still a sensation of thingness identity. And this is too to be witnessed. So any sensation is never your identity. It's never any sensation of a nudge, of a disturbance, of anything, something similar to this. It's never your identity. It's always evidence that there's this thing identity as being the awareness is sitting too close and staring too close, and is unaware of its own identity, which is just simply the perceiver of it. So look at the thinker, look at the chooser, the liker and the disliker. These things are massively prominent, and it's so quick for comments to be made saying, I am this, I am that, now please give me a solution to this, and it will never happen. It's not designed to ever have a solution, for the very state that it is of being a thing is the problem. And being awareness, which is not a thing, is what's that nudge eventually encouraging you to come to. It's the destiny of everyone eventually, no matter how many lifetimes it takes, to reach this awareness identity that knows is and sees, but it is not associated with anything that it sees or looks at. There's no need for non-attachment and all this sort of stuff, because you just see that you are not it. To be non-attached is the reason why this comment usually gets much criticism, or the meaning has to be constantly explained to people about what non-attachment is. Non-attachment happens by itself when the awareness sees the thing as not its own identity, and then the attachment releases. So it's an automatic process. Now, if you want to detach, what you're actually being is a thing detaching from a thing, and it doesn't work. And this is why non-attachment often has a lot of criticism to it. It causes a lot of further nudges and a lot of further problems, because you're still being a thing. You need not do anything to be yourself. You already are yourself. To non-attach, it has a lot of it. There's nothing wrong with talking about attachment to explain consciousness's fusement with things, but in regards to explaining in a manner of you doing something so you don't attach to the thing, can be used, but ultimately it's not necessary, because it can pertain itself to the realm of being a thing again. You're being a thing and trying to do the absolute goal, which is realize that you're not a thing, and by trying to detach, you're putting yourself to somewhat of an extent in the thing realm again. And there's nothing wrong with using that word non-attachment, but just to recognize that that's why it has a lot of problems more with it, and it doesn't sit well with people when you say it. It's not meant to sit well, because depending on the way the ears are hearing it and whether the consciousness is hearing it, if the non-attachment is being listened to while someone is being a thing, then it's going to cause more disturbances, and that's why they don't resonate when they hear that word. It sounds disconnected and all that. And then on the other side of the coin, non-attachment also for thing-based identities that still have a strong realm in the emotion realm, and believe that this is quite necessary, that haven't yet seen where emotions actually come from. They actually come from being a thing, and haven't yet had much experience in life, that if you do not become a thing, then this state doesn't actually need mind thing-based emotions. There's states of being that come from our awareness that are beyond emotions. The technical term for what an emotion is it derives when your consciousness is looking and staring as your identity as a thing, and through these emotions just pop out. And these emotions are sometimes fluffy, positive emotions, and then obviously they have their opposite side of the coin, which is the ones that cause the nudges. Both the emotions are coming from being a thing identity, and you need neither the negative emotions nor do you need the positive emotions. The state of being on its own, if you could experience your life predominantly as just your original identity as awareness prior to any identification with things, you'll realize that these emotional roller coasters of positives and negatives, they're totally unnecessary. And there's a deeper connection, a more truer connection that exists in this awareness state, and anything that comes from this state, which is these fluffy emotions that bounce around like a roller coaster and are subject to their opposites all the time. It's a never-ending roller coaster. And it's only till you get enough experience in this awareness realm that these beliefs about the necessity of emotions will dissolve on their own. You don't need to detach yourself from these emotional roller coaster rides. Eventually they'll be seen as where they come from, which is your awareness's fusement with thing-based identity. And when you see that the origin of these emotions, and you experience a lessening of these emotional states, naturally it will occur that the awareness's importance will drop away from believing that the only way we can live is through this roller coaster realm, which is and there's many beliefs, justification beliefs, that say that I will be shallow and disconnected and heartless and uncompassionate if I'm not having this roller coaster, and this is eventually for the awareness to discover that that's not true. Sometimes it may take decades before this roller coaster ride just becomes tiring, and eventually some cracks appear, and you eventually see the origins are actually coming from your fusement to a false state. They don't actually come from pure reality. They are not a direct experience from reality. They are an experience that comes from your fusement with a thing-based identity that's in perceiving reality, and it's through this filter that's where these emotions are coming from, and they're unnecessary. I myself did live for many years in this roller coaster realm, and I too had these justifications, so I can understand why people say these comments and feel like, hang on, I get what you're saying, it sounds like I'm going to be cold or I'm going to be disconnected. And eventually the tiring effect of this roller coaster will bring you to your own truthful conclusion, to see that you actually don't need it. You'll be much more connected, much more compassionate, much more clear and understanding with people, much more loving with people, without this regurgitated effect from the thing-based identity through our awareness's fusement with the thing-based identity. And that's all it comes from. It does not come from reality. And what the emotions then do, they distort your reality, because until you see the original cause of where these emotions are coming from, that they're coming from this fusement process of awareness with the thing, then you'll misperceive the emotions as coming from people and situations. And that's where even more dramas come along. And these dramas are meant to come along to force you again to come back into awareness. Every single drama, every single problem, no matter what it is, always has its solution in awareness. It's the only thing needed. And in the ancient American Indian tribes, they realized this effect thousands of years. So as their solution to stopping this fusement process, I've heard this several times, and I can't really verify it, but apparently the story is they brought their children up with no language up until they were 18 years old. So they allowed just awareness to exist in the planet, to move around in the planet, to touch trees, to sense trees, to feel the land, to feel their union with everything, with nature, to feel their natural union with people without the obstruction of concepts, with thing-based identity getting in the way of their vision. And then when this awareness was very well developed, then they introduced language and concepts at the age of 18 years old. So we don't probably necessarily need to go to that process, but it's important to understand, just the effects, and you will not realize it until you start to come into awareness how much your life is affected by being a thing-based. And this thing-based identity, the first validity and self-evident validity to prove for yourself of its non-validity is that it's always constantly never-ending changing. This thing-based identity, when it was 16 years old, and then when it was 26 years old and 36 years old and 46 years old, is constantly changing every day, every week. The 16-year-old thing-based identity is totally different than it is at 36-year-old thing-based identity. And the fact that it can continually change, yet there's this awareness, which is who you are, is evidence that you are not what you see, but you are the awareness that sees things. And this is never changing. And this is not subject to anything. It's not subject to any category. The only definition I'll give is it's a silent perceiver, and it knows everything. And until you experience this gradually more and more each day for yourself, then you'll begin to realize the importance of this and how it can solve every problem by making problems actually not needed to be solved. It was the state in which the consciousness was fused with that caused the problem in the first place. Nor do you need to solve any problem. Problems are never ending in the thing-based identity. It's the destiny for it to be that way. It's the intelligence of our universe to create these never-ending problems, and they do stop when you comfortably rest as awareness. And this happens on its own when eventually you see the falseness that I am not this thing. Every day, I am not this thing. Here it comes again. Here's the thinker, and here's the dramas associated with the thinker. Here's the chooser and the dramas associated with the chooser, and the uncertainty. Here's the liker and the disliker personality identity thing. If you can keep looking at this every time and just suddenly look gently and calmly and silently without comments, and look at this every day and see how there's your name, which is your first name and last name, towards this thing, and see how that's entangled, and see there's an image of what you think this is, this thing, and then start to glimpse at it in such a manner where you see that I'm not that thing, I'm the awareness of this, and I don't need all these associated personalities of my identity as this thing. I don't need it, and you don't need it because you can see I'm the perceiver. You can feel it, and then you can also see that it's constantly shifting in its appearance, and if it constantly changes and I am still here always as the awareness, then I can't be this. It'll be figured out on your own. You'll discover this for yourself, and the truth will set you free in this way, is that you don't have to do anything. I'm not trying to give any instructions here to do anything. Also, I'm asking you see if you can be what you already are, which is awareness. Engage in that awareness, so you can technically call it you're doing something in a conscious, proactive manner. But if you do this, again, I've used the word do again, but it's not meant to be a doing. You already are awareness. So activate that you already are. So let's delete the word do. So I can't even I don't even know how to phrase this without using the word do. But be that you already are, which is the seeing, silent, all-knowing awareness that doesn't need any concepts, and especially doesn't need any concepts about an identity self. It doesn't need that at all. And as you keep doing this every day, eventually this starts getting smaller and smaller. It shrinks, and your awareness grows bigger and bigger, and it becomes much, much more easy to detect when your identity has become infused with as a thing-based identity. And then you realize that there's no big deal about being a no-thing identity. We already were no-thing identity, whether you like it or whether your thing-based identity likes it or not. It's our original nature. It's silent awareness. The whole animal kingdom lives this way, and they live absolutely perfect. And when a decision's needed, it's given to them instantaneously. Absolute spontaneous right action. And it's like tennis players and sports people. When this thing-based identity drops away for a moment, and there's just pure awareness, pure knowing, spontaneous right action occurs, and this is called the zone. And as soon as this comes back in, terrible tennis playing occurs. So what some tennis players used to do, they knew about this understanding of consciousness and thing-based identity. So some tennis players would deliberately try to get their opponent, they would act angry to try to generate a response, to try to trigger this thing-based identity to arise. Because the more this thing-based identity was in their tennis game, the less their awareness and the spontaneous right action was there. And this is where perfect thinkless actions arise. You absolutely know you're going to smash the living daylights out of that tennis ball, and you know it's going to hit that absolute perfect corner of the court with no thinking, effortless, spontaneous action. And we all do this every day. You don't have to play tennis. Every time when we're relaxed, that's when awareness is in its highest predominant state. Whenever we're in distress or tension or struggle, it means now consciousness has come close back to the thing-based identity again. Everyone's doing spontaneous right action every single day, whether you like it or not. You don't have to be in the arts or the sports field to do so. So I think that's the horn just beeped now, so that's time for the end of this video. And but please, again, don't be that you are. See what you are not. See the thing-based identity. See the flavour of all the, and notice that what your consciousness or at least the delusion of what is perceived as your identity. I am this. I'm bad. I'm good. I'm good at this. I'm not good at this. I'm a nice person. I'm a bad person. All the entities and conceptual framework that exist in this. Every 7 billion people. This is another evidential fact. 7 billion people are going to have totally different perceptions. You've actually got 7 different opinions of what you think you are, and according to your perception of what your consciousness believes itself and mistakenly believes itself to be, it's totally different to the 7 billion perceptions of what other people are going to perceive, and all their perceptions are false as well. I'm not going to say it's because it's not your perception, it's just an illusionary perception that appears to you, so it's not your perception, but this is false. And every perception which isn't other people's perceptions either, it is their thing-based identity's perception is false as well, of who they think you are. At the end of the day, we're all awareness. This is when we come unified and one. And there is only, it's the end of all separation. When you recognize your own identity as this awareness, then you also sense it in another. You realize it in another. And that's where true love, true compassion arises. There's nothing wrong with for living for a few decades, living in positive thoughts about people. If this creates a replica, synthesized version of love, then do so. If that's the pathway that you feel comfortable with, do that. But eventually there needs to be, it'll happen anyway for everybody, that awareness will evolve beyond that, where it won't need any conceptual framework, whether it be positive framework or negative framework. It exists prior to all of that. It is the awareness that sees all positive and negative frameworks. It is not a thing, it is the awareness, it is the perceiver of things. And that's where your home is. It's our original identity, is who you are when you came into this planet, and then through decades of conditioning, you've now it's now been perceived that this is who I am. Instead of this is the awareness. So do not do. Be that you are, and see. Activate your seeing, and do not even activate. You already are seeing. Don't do nothing. My advice is do not do nothing. Thank you.